welcome to Property Quorum. Welcome once again to another Property Quorum. This is a very special one, actually. Hamish has decided to go further afield and explore the bright blue yonder, the green fields, the lush meadows, etc., etc. It's actually it is chairing a get-together, a bit of a shindig for his stalwarts in the search and convey industry, which is, of course, IPSA. Hamish, remind me again, before I make an utter fool of myself, what does IPSA stand for?
The Association of Independent Property Search Agents.
I should really learn that. And of course, we have Chris Gilsenan from Root Home, who is our tame property developer, especially in the social space. But today, I'm very pleased to say we have two other entrants. Now, we have the delightful Michelle Carr of Construction Alchemy and H2. And of course, we have Bushra Mohammed. Now, Bushra is very kindly stepping into the breach, as it were, because our tame property lawyer is unfortunately detained elsewhere, Juliet Baboolal. Bushra is an acclaimed lawyer and also an investor. Michelle does something particularly interesting. Actually, Michelle, we will get to you in a second so you can tell the world exactly what it's about. But first of all, I'm going to throw mercilessly, as per ever, Hamish straight under the bus with today's topic. And today's topic, of course, I really need an echo for this one. Predators in the property market. Hamish, what in hell's name do you mean by that?
Well, I thought it was going to be fairly straightforward because I knew from my own experience that we were having challenges, and particularly large corporates from overseas were interfering in what was going on in conveyancing with conveyancing data. And I started doing a little bit of research, and some of it was as a consequence of something that Michelle had said as well. And I did actually find that whilst we ourselves, IPSA, are taking one of these companies to the CMA because of the interference of what they're actually doing in the marketplace, I found out that the majority of the large construction companies had also been reported to the CMA, and they were sort of smacking wrists sort of here and there, but not to any great extent. But they are interfering with the smaller subcontractors out there, and they're causing sort of havoc there. So what we've got is these big multinational corp. They are interfering. We hear sort of some strange noises about what's going on with conveyancing, referral fees, and goodness knows sort of what else. But it's most of the bigger boys, the people that have the money, that are actually sort of causing this.
Agents from abroad mucking around with our data, heaven forfend. Chris, what's going on?
Yeah, well, Hamish's article really uncovered quite a conspiracy, which surprised me. It was quite an unknown element to me. It doesn't surprise me in the slightest. The big boys are acting in nefarious ways. That the property market, it's inherently got issues. It's inherently got because of the large the big ticket items, the houses, cars. They do attract predatory characters and naughty people, shall we say? But yeah, the level that Hamish has found is quite mind blowing. For me, yeah, I'm aware of all sorts of different predatory practices that are in the market. So a common one that we come up against and is vendors who have had a really bad experience with people who are trying to buy their house. Quite often, some of the more unscrupulous wholesalers who will do things like gazunder at the very last minute. They will drop the price just before completion. That's a pretty naughty practice, especially if that person has already mentally spent that and allocated that money, to experience a price drop of 10, 20, 30,000 pounds. So that's just one example of my first-hand experience of other people being impacted by predatory behaviour in the markets.
Bushra, welcome. Predatory behaviour? That cannot be. We're in sunny England, aren't we?
It's unfortunate. It does happen. And with property, there's so many different parties involved. So if you've got your solicitor, your agents, your brokers, your builders, it covers so many industries that it's going to happen in one way or another, I think. And as a solicitor, obviously, I'm going to advocate we are transparent and we advocate clients' best interests. So it's unfortunate, but even as a property investor, it's important that we are all collaborating in a way that we hold the SMEs' interests at heart. So it creates a more of a level playing field. With the big major house builders, obviously they've got a monopoly almost now, and then we're seeing so many of the big large retailers now entering the scene because they've got all these huge retail spaces to be able to utilize. And you and I maybe don't have that empty Debenhams and John Lewis that is struggling to convert the opposition residential. So they're in the build to rent market as well now. So how they do it, whether being unscrupulous, but they've just got more bargaining power as well. So I see it from that perspective as an investor. From a solicitor's point of view, I also see how certain estate agents maybe are playing certain games with clients and then trying to turn solicitors and their clients against each other. I see that, and I've experienced that a lot as well, where the agent will tell one thing to the client, the selling client and the buyer, and then will tell me something completely different. And then it just becomes a huge argument because we're kind of almost conflicting rather than working together. So at the end of the day, I just feel certain parties shouldn't really interfere, basically. When it comes to conveyancing transactions, I do think that estate agents have their place. Some of them do a great job. But when it comes to conveyancing, I do think that at that point, they should just let it be. And when a solicitor has something to update, they will update. Not say, have you done this? Have you done that? When it's just been 24 hours.
Well, Michelle, absolute welcome. Now, before we get into anything further, would you explain to all and sundry your mission? Because you have one, I think. Oh, gosh, I've lost your audio. Michelle, we've lost your audio. No, not at all. I can't do... Well, I'll tell you what, Michelle, why don't you come out and come back in again and we'll crack on. Hamish, this seems to be an issue that is only of recent making. Is this anything to do with the way in which the property market went into freefall during a bit of the pandemic, and now we're coming out the other side? We've got all these foreign agents desperately trying to get ahead of the game. Could that be anything to do with it?
Not a lot. I guess it's a partial contribution. I prefer not to call it a pandemic, to be perfectly honest, because it was really lockdown, because we've still got the pandemic, if the pandemic ever existed in the first place. There's still all these cases of COVID. The difference is nobody tests themselves any longer, so they don't know how many people have got COVID anymore.
No, I just call it life at the moment. It's pretty much just getting on with it.
What has happened, it has enabled, of course, much more of what we're doing here at the moment, the virtual meetings. But it's enabled much more of that. However, what there is underneath everything that's going on, there have been challenges in the property market. They just haven't been brought to light. And I think this is the big difference. Have we got Michelle's voice back?
We're good. Just about the time. Yes.
Can you hear me?
There she is. Hooray. Actually, before further ado, Michelle, quickly, please tell us all, what is your mission?
So my original mission was to make the world a better place. I think we're all responsible for that. So then I decided that there are a number of ways I tried, it didn't quite work, to use my skill set in construction to do what I could in the construction industry. And one of the streamlines I was going to have for my business was taking the con out of construction, because there is so much of it. There's so many unscrupulous people, and I've worked for a few of them. So my ethos is to work for good people. And then I sort of took it a step further and I used my skill set, my, should we say, strength and my passion to support people that are against unscrupulous people, predators. So primarily I've set up...
Because essentially you're a quantity surveyor plus. are you not?
Yeah, so I've got a law degree. I'm a member of the CIRB, so I've got dispute experience. But I try not to get people to dispute. But also, what happens a lot in the industry, especially with the big companies that we've mentioned before in house building, not only are they unscrupulous to the end user, but also to the subcontractors building. And what often happens, and in my experience buying off of a developer, they screw the subcontractor so badly that the quality isn't the same. And I've had so many problems. And to be fair, I've been in most of the houses in my development supporting them against our developer who really don't like me because I've cost them a lot of money.
I wonder why.
Yeah. So, but where they've been so harsh on the subcontractors, the quality of the actual delivery of the project itself. So not only are you having issues with last minute drops and etc, but also when you actually unravel and start living in the property, there's so many problems where things haven't been done properly because they're just cutting costs all the time.
So let's address today's topic: predators.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, so one of the things that I do is primarily support subcontractors, but I also work for developers. I also work for end user clients, and I just protect people against predators and the unscrupulous people that want to rip everybody off. There's enough money in the world for it to be shared about a little bit more.
Well, excuse me, I just feel like putting on my tie-dye caftan immediately. Is there enough money in the world to be shared around, Bushra?
Yeah.
Do we need these predators there, or are they part of the marketplace and we need them to push forward to help us gain a foothold? You know, more money and all that?
Of course. I think it's just a mindset that if you believe in that, if you believe in the abundance of deals out there, of potential clients, work, of course there is, definitely. I think if you don't and you think there is a limit to it and there's scarcity, then unfortunately that's how those predators will behave in that way as well.
Wow. So is it just mindset madness, Chris? Should we just pretend they don't exist, put the blinkers on?
It's the same old story that there's a few bad apples that spoil it for everyone else. It's sadly it's the nature of life, but as Bushra's alluded to, that it does come from a mindset perspective, and I'm afraid that those people who are behaving in a predatory way do think that there's a scarcity to X, Y, and Z, and which is why they behave in the ways that they do. They cut corners, they put pressure on people, they try and bully people, or just take advantage. So yeah, it's really important to have the right people around you, just to make sure that you're not taken advantage of. And people like Michelle, people like Bushra can help in that regard. So we've mentioned it time and time again that it's having the right team around you. But I guess part of that challenge is knowing who you need in your team.
That is definitely the problem.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many people who purport to be one thing, and it's only once you start working with them you find that you scratch the veneer off, and underneath is plywood.
Yeah, not ideal.
So, Bushra, tell me this. What's the best way of identifying whether the people are a predator? Is there any rule 101 that we can follow to identify whether they're the people you want to work with or not?
Good question. So I think number one would be recommendation. Recommendation in any trade is a huge factor, I think. And then possibly networking. So when you network, you'll meet lots of people. And obviously, if you think you can get along with that person in the next 5 minutes of talking to them, you'll get a gut feeling, I think, whether you will work with them, whether they'll be on your same level. But if you want to work with the right person, definitely recommendation will be your number one key factor. Just as I'm trying to find maybe a decorator or a plasterer, I'll make sure I get 3+ quotes. And then I'll ask my network to give me some recommendations. It will take time. It adds obviously a huge amount of time rather than going to the first person you meet. But in the long run, you're going to de-risk yourself from the nasty people out there who are going to do a bad job, like Michelle alluded to, or might not get paid by their head contractor. So you want to be able to support the people that may not be able to get those jobs, but also get a good quality job at the same time. I'm all for trying to support the local economy where I am or where my properties are based. and trying to get as many local tradesmen in, or tradeswomen as well, just to support that local economy and then give back in that sense as well as an investor.
I think the technical term is tradespeople.
Okay.
Michelle, I keep tripping over my own toes on this in this new world that we live in. How do you avoid predators?
2 ways for me. First of all, employ a QS. But not necessarily a QS. Employ professionals. I mean, QSs are underrated in the industry, and I don't just say that because I am one, because we're the only trade or the only professional that you can actually get a return on your investment for, because we save you money. But also employ a professional that you can trust, get a recommendation. Someone that can actually protect your interests and know more about the industry than you do is always helpful. The second thing, always check the contract. For me, whatever people are saying, if they're happy to put what they're saying in writing, so for example, if it's an estate agent and they're saying, I don't know, the bills are £300 a month, get that in writing, get it improved, check the contract, because ultimately where these predators get you is in the contract. And I wrote a post recently about people think I'm a contract specialist. I'm not. I just always go back to the contract, because that's the key information of where you're going through, and that's what you rely on. And if a predator is going to get you, they will get you in the small print, because ultimately when you try to fight, oh, you told me XYZ, oh, but that's not what the contract says, and I'm sure Bushra, you're fully aware of that. And if it's in the contract, there's nothing you can do about it. So I think the best way is employ professionals to get some decent professional advice. Some will give it to you for free because they're nice like that. And the other thing is always check the contract. And if you're not confident in checking the contract, then pay somebody to check it for you.
I'll never forget that it was, I think it's 2 years ago, I picked up some cups, bear with, from a well-known burger chain that had written in tiny print at the bottom, not suitable for holding hot or cold fluids. Anyway, so moving on.
I remember the same cups.
Yes, there you go. Absolutely ridiculous. Hamish, you wrote this groundbreaking article recently that's frankly astonishing. Are we able to get past these predators? Are they here to stay?
Well, they're here anyway, because they have money. They have money, and they will try many, many ways. And once you actually prevent them from doing it in one direction, they'll find another way to do it. I think the worst of it is we've got an unsuspecting public out there who are railroaded, going down a particular route. We hear of this, that they'll walk into an estate agent and he says, right, you have to go to my broker, you have to go to the solicitor I've allocated. And he's getting referrals and backhanders from these people because they're unregulated within the estate. I'm not getting an estate agent, because I know some fantastic estate agents, but we hear that's a very, very common practice, particularly with the larger chains, the larger groups of estate agents, the big boyos out there with multi-bucks. So unfortunately, people aren't aware that they should check it out for themselves. As Bushra was saying, that it's so important to work with the right people. I think every single time we have one of our podcasts, we say, speak to the right people.
It is a theme, is it not? It is our main theme.
Yes, we have a room full at this moment, and we will point you in the right direction. We won't necessarily have the answers for you specifically, but we can tell you somebody who will have the answers for you.
Chris, one last word. How do you find it avoiding predators, or do you just deal with them?
It's challenging. So my general rule of thumb is to give people a reason to trust people until they give me a reason not to do. Now, that's my personal way of operating. Maybe it's right or wrong, I don't know. But I know based off the back of this conversation, I need to be having a further follow-up with Michelle. Just because we don't have a QS.
I mean, personally speaking, I cannot recommend more that people within this industry who are standing on the edge, someone with the experience that Michelle has, can probably stop them from jumping headlong into the crevasse. Let me just bring us all together. Thank you, everybody. As usual, Hamish, I'm going to leave it for you just to take us home.
Well, I think what's so good about the way we're actually able to come together and speak about these things, and we're actually genuine people, and we speak openly. And unfortunately, not everybody does within the property industry, but we know, and it was indicated, I think it might have been Bushra that said it right, there is so much money involved There's multi-billion pounds that have been invested by the Canadians, by the Australians, by the Germans most recently in grabbing the data relative to conveyancing. And then we've got the building structure, what's actually going on with this, the materials. There's just so much there. It's just take care. And if you take care, and I think, I can't remember who it was who said it, but somebody very wisely said, speak to somebody. If you're speaking to them and you're interested in the conversation with them, you should be able to find out within 5 minutes whether that's the person to go with. If you're not entirely happy, go find somebody else to speak to for 5 minutes. There's lots of people you can speak to, but make sure it's the right one.
Well, on that note, all it remains for me to do is thank our wonderful attendees, Chris Gilsenan of Root Home, Hamish McLay of Search Convey, Bushra, Mohammed, Jabeen Investments, of course, Michelle Carr of Construction, Alchemy and H2. If anything that's been mentioned today has struck a chord with you, I urge you to get in touch with any of the people you see here, but also just give us a steer on what you'd like us to talk about in future. Hamish at the moment is going to run off and meet and greet and shake people warmly by the shoulder and say hello to them all. But until next time, this has been Property Quorum.